gallery here in southwest France and my YouTube channel Enjoy Watercolour Painting. I'm Diana, I'm a watercolourist and I also give classes to people who like to come to enjoy their watercolour painting. The subject of today's video is something a little bit different from the weather we're experiencing at the moment, which is very hot, extremely hot and dry. So I decided that a good subject for this week's video would be a wet street at night with lights and reflections. I looked on the internet to find different photographs, all of course subject to copyright. I did download some. I have one here which is quite complex, very colourful and has lots of light and shade. But because of the copyright I can't copy it totally. So I just used it as an inspiration for the colours of the palette and the reflections that the glaring lights of the shops produce. I've broken it down into simple stages to take you through the whole process. So come with me and let's paint. Now I've done some preparatory work on this piece of Arches 300 gram fine grain paper. I have used a soft 2B pencil and a ruler to get the perspective with lines taking me along the street in the direction to the left, because I want to simplify the street scene and I don't want to include too much detail. So I have these diagonals taking me to a vanishing point, which will be just about the end of the paper. If we go along and extend the line, you can see it will go to there, and this line will take us also to there, just so that we have this point of direction. I have used the ruler again to give me an idea of some of the verticals, that is the definition of the different shops. But I'm not going to draw them in detail. And I have then used masking fluid and a liner brush protected with just a very thin coating of washing up liquid. And I have applied masking fluid to the areas that you see in blue, which are just shafts of light indicating the different shop fronts. And I also have a light here as well at the end. I'm not sure about that yet. I have drawn it. I don't know whether it will work or not. We'll see how we go. And so now I'm ready to think about the palette that I'm going to use to create this wet street scene, which is a night scene as well, with lots of atmosphere. And this is what I'm trying to create. So watch me now as we start with the colours and the different mixes, and off we go. You can see that I have everything organised now. The masking fluid on the paper is dry. I have 4 palettes, a blue palette with Payne's Grey, Winsor Blue red shade, ultramarine blue and Winsor Blue green shade. A neutral palette here with burnt sienna and Payne's Grey, and also manganese blue at the side here, which I may well use. Then I have a palette here which has the makings of violet with permanent rose and I think this is Winsor Blue red shade, although I'll know once I get the colour going, and a yellow palette with transparent yellow, a burnt sienna and transparent orange. Now I'm going to work all these palettes up with as much colour as we can achieve, and a dense colour, because I want to, right from the start, the colour to be very intense, and all the palettes need to be available to use at one time, because this procedure is going to work quite quickly. I am not wetting the paper first, and as you will see once we get started, it's just a question of starting with the yellow tones, the lighter tones, and working through to the darker ones. So off we go. I have a selection of brushes available, mop brushes and round brushes, and one flat acrylic brush. And as you can see, I'm using a medium mop brush to start with the yellow washes, blocking in the colour in the areas which I've defined with the pencil. Washing it down, keeping the paint wet because I don't want tide lines and I don't want blooms, but I have the structure of the pencil work to guide me. Once that area, that block of colour is wet, I can add more colour, as you see, and then take more colour down to meet it. And these are all the light highlights of the street. We always start with yellow because it's so easily lost. And with watercolours, once you work from light to dark, and so once you have lost your light, your white and your yellow, you can't get it back. So it's important to get it there first of all, to apply it first of all. So I'm working my way down the street now, just blocking in the area. And you can see I'm taking the yellow right down into the street itself, because those are going to be my reflections of the light. And it is important to do that right from the start. I don't need to worry about working around the areas which have been masked, because the paint will just glide over the top, and then we can remove the masking fluid later. Now I'm going with the blue, and as you probably know, blue and yellow make green. And so this is why I have done the two colours separately and put them in blocks of colour, rather than working wet on wet and letting the two colours combine. If we'd done that with this picture, we would end up with greens and we would lose the yellow completely. So this is why we have to do it in blocks of colour, which makes it more structured. But I have my pencil lines to follow, and again I'm just blocking in the blues, but making them slightly different in different areas, because I want to create that feeling of the different buildings. And to the left of the painting we have more blues, more darkness, because it is a street at night, and the upper part of the buildings will be darker than the ones lit by the shop fronts. I'm still following the line, the pencil line that I applied at the beginning. This is to help with the perspective and give me that sense of direction as the street falls away or runs away to the left. I'm adding water as well as colour, so I get some nice blended effects. It's not all the same. I don't want it to be too rigid. Painting in blocks like this, there will be a certain amount of rigidity, but every so often I can drop colour in and let it blend, so it gives that misty and fluid look, which is what I want, with some structure. Moving back to the right now, where we have more light, and there is a lantern on the wall here which gives light down onto the street also. I'm just going round it now, but I will need to apply more yellow to that area later, but you'll see how that goes once we get there. Taking the blue right across. The position of the paper isn't good here because I'm working spontaneously. The paper's kind of dropped down out of shot, which is okay, but not totally okay, because you can't really see the fact that I have applied a blue wash on the left hand side, but I decided to stick with it. Once it's done, we're stuck with it really, so please forgive me for working out of shot just momentarily. But now you can see the blue that I applied onto the street, just as I did with the yellow. So we now have that feeling of the line of the shops, the light from the shops, and I'm using watercolour crayon to define those limits, to give a little bit more structure. I haven't filmed all this procedure, but you can see I am indicating windows and openings in the buildings. Just working along, sometimes with the blue pencil, sometimes with a burnt sienna pencil. And now I'm using the flat acrylic brush just to move that colour a little so that it isn't too rigid a line. And dark colour has to go in. I'm putting a block of dark mix of Payne's Grey and Winsor Blue Green shade onto this area, again following the same line to help with the perspective. This time the head has got in the way again. Do apologise for that. It's very difficult to concentrate on the painting and think about the position of the camera as well. Maybe I will improve, but I do find it difficult, so apologies again. I'm not trying to give too much detail. I'm just creating blocks of colour, almost abstract in a way, but just to give the feeling of the street and the architecture without being too detailed. Now you can see I have that structure and I want to kind of blur it a little. So I'm using my large hake brush with water to go over the whole of the top part of the street, just blending the colour a little. You can see I've left the area around the light because I want to add yellow there. But to begin with, I can now spot some colour in. This will help to make it more diffused and softer. We don't want it to be too structured. It's not the most important part of the picture. And now it's all damp, I can add stronger yellow around the light and move the blue a little, being careful not to blend the two because, as I've already said, we don't want green. I think I've avoided that though, which is okay. The shops are my next destination, if you like, with colour, and again I'm using the acrylic flat to help me. This flat acrylic brush is very good for structural things. You can get a straight edge and block colour in, which is what I'm trying to do, to give a suggestion of the doors and the structure of the framework of the shop. And I've kind of worked my way along the street doing that. I could have spent more time on this, but I think you got the gist of how we would go. And now I'm thinking about putting people in my street. Love to paint people. Head first, chest, and don't worry too much about the legs. Add a little bit of shading and then do the other half of the person just with water. Here's another one. We're judging the size by the size of the shop front and the doors. So don't make them too giant and don't make them too small. Just judge the infrastructure which you've already painted in. And this is why I've done it this way around. Now as we come down the street towards us, the people are going to be larger. And so I can add a little bit more colour and a little bit more detail. Start with the head. The size of the head dictates the body. Head, chest, body, legs, and then just water on the other side, going right down to the feet. Don't worry too much about the feet. If they're moving, you will only really see one leg anyway. The other one will be behind. So you've got quite a lot of artistic license. I do have a video which I made last year in my list, which is all about painting simple people. So if you are unsure, have a look at that and it will guide you in more detail than I'm doing today. I'm giving this lady an umbrella. I think a red umbrella will brighten up the scene a little. And finally, we want someone who is bigger, and by the first shot we see, which is a little bit more detailed. And here he is, he's just thinking about going inside. I did actually, in the end, put a lady on her way in. She's already made the decision to go in. But for some reason, I didn't film that bit. But you will see her in a later shot, just disappearing in the door. And he's standing there looking a bit indecisive, I think. Now we're going to think about our reflections. And I'm being quite brave here. The people are there in the street. I don't want to paint over them. I haven't masked them yet, but I will mask them later. But I want to add some more shading. Blues on the left and brown in the areas where the reflections of the doors and the structure of the shops can be seen. This is the initial wash. We will have to revisit, as you will see in a little while. Starting to look like a wet day. I think the umbrella and the dazzling light of the shops, it's starting to bring out that yellow, are helping towards the effect. I think wet streets at night are very atmospheric. Having second thoughts about the light on the left, I think I'm going to cut that one off. We'll see that in the next frame, I think. Just using the flat brush now just to move the colour a little so it's a little bit less defined. And the picture's dry now. I have cut off the bit on the left, the light that wasn't really working. And now I want to go back and add more reflections, stronger reflections on the street. So I've turned the picture on its side so I can get that symmetry of the reflections, the darker reflections in the water, in the wet of the surface of the street. Even the people are creating reflections, and they're important. So we're putting the colour on with quite a pointed but round, if that makes any sense, mop brush, which holds a lot of paint. So I can work away without replenishing the brush and deliver lots of colour. I have masked the people now, so I can go over the lady with her red umbrella, knowing that we won't harm her once we take the masking fluid off. Smaller reflections here for smaller people because they're further away, but the reflection of the building goes strongly into the street, reflected in the wet surface. Now I can turn it over and we can see how bold it has to be, and I'm still using the mop brush just to apply more colour. Now I just want to wash it across a little. It's partially dry now because I said right at the introduction to this video, it's very hot at the moment. It's hot even in here in the gallery, and so the paint is drying quickly. And so I'm not going to move it drastically, even going over with clean water and just washing the colour across. I think you can just spot the lady nipping into the shop on the right. There she is, and he's still indecisive. watching my video. I hope it's given you the inspiration to try this subject. Quite complex in the end, really. It's a study of light and shade and colour. And of course we could add lots more people and we could continue to work and develop it. But I did try to break it down into different sections for you. Please don't forget to give me your comments, send your comments as to whether that worked for you or not. I really appreciate your input, and also to like and subscribe. I like to cover a great range of subjects and techniques so that you can try them all and see which ones you like to use and which ones you have to really work at to perfect. So until the next time, thank you for watching. Bye.